Okay, so I've been asked to talk about our experience with DFT funding and what impact that's had on our asset maintenance regime, which is ironic, seeing as we didn't win any money in the last round of funding, Darren. Um, so, so Baines is a small council. We don't have a huge amount of traffic signals, and what we've got is mostly quite small sites. So it's not a particularly onerous challenge like somewhere like Manchester. 117 sets of signals, 40 junctions, one big roundabout, but mostly fairly small shuttles or just pedestrian crossings. So it's not particularly tricky. When we recently applied to the DFT for funding, we pulled together a load of data from ImTrack and from our fault management system, and we came up with this information. So the situation we're in at the moment, 47 of our sites are over 15 years old, so technically life expired, but they're still working. 70 are okay, they're under 15 years. If nothing changes funding-wise in a decade, we'll have 70 that are over 15 years and only 40 odd that are okay. So we're about to fall off a cliff in terms of maintenance. Might not be quite that bad because there's a lot of projects proposed. So CRSTS is proposing insane numbers of schemes. There's all sorts of funding coming from bus schemes and cycle schemes and all sorts of stuff. And if that all comes to pass and everything that we've asked for happens, we'll just about break even and still be in 10 years' time at the point that we've got 40 odd sites that are life expired and 70-ish that are okay. So that's our current situation. We're fighting exactly the same battles as Glasgow, and we're trying really hard to keep everything working. So what are we doing about it? The biggest problem that we face is that the older a site gets, the more money you have to spend to maintain the damn thing. So you've got obsolescence issues. I've recently had to upgrade all of our RMS sites to UTC monitoring because we need to get rid of RMS. PSTN lines are being phased out. We've got the same halogen head challenge. We actually got rid of our last site last year, but it cost us a lot of money to do that. And money we wouldn't have spent if we'd have been able to keep replacing our sites when we wanted to. We've got obsolete controllers. We got away lightly with that one because our last obsolete controller got pancaked by a van and we got the guy's number plate. So that was good. Outstations, my RMS Geminis, if they are 4 meg units, they can't be repurposed. They just have to go in the bin. I have to replace them. We've got issues with rusting poles. We have hundreds of poles that are over 15 years old. When do we replace them? And that costs a lot. Rusting brackets. There's not really a way to test if a bracket is structurally sound. If it looks rusty, you have to just replace it, switch the site off. It costs a lot of money. So the older a site gets, the more it costs to maintain. And then you hit that problem where you can't afford to do refurbs because all you're doing is chasing your tail with maintenance. And like I say, we're about to fall off a cliff in terms of maintenance. So what are we doing about it? Pretty much the same as every other council, I imagine. If there's a project that will refurbish a site that we want to refurbish, we try really hard to support it. So CRSTS is helping us a lot with that. Where funding opportunities arise, we are going for that funding like a dog after a sausage. But the problem that we're having is that it's not enough. We didn't get the DFT funding, but because of all the graphs and the information we produced, which senior management saw and signed off on so that we could complete the application, they released some extra internal funding to help us because they could see how bad things were for us. So that was really good. We take our asset management data and we prioritize our renewals program as carefully as we can to replace only the worst sites. And it might not be the oldest sites, it might be the ones that have had the most maintenance call-outs that year or that few months. And the final thing, and the one thing that I really want to focus on, because this is for me about, to a certain extent, sharing best practice and information, where we can save money safely, we're doing that. So with our rusty pole problem, we have literally hundreds of rusty poles that are 15 years old or more. We can't afford to replace hundreds of poles. So we got a company that our street lighting department recommended to do non-destructive pole testing. And we found that of the hundreds and hundreds of poles that we have, only one of them needed replacing. That saved us a fortune. So that was a good piece of work to do. We recently wanted to do an RMS to UTC upgrade. So we didn't want to be paying for two pieces of monitoring software, and Baines have an in-house Scoot expert, so they decided to just roll over everything to UTC for fault monitoring. We were given some money internally in place of the money that we were hoping to get from DFT, but we still got funded, so it was still a win. And the money was about a third of what we needed to do the project. So I had to make that money fit the project. So I went round to neighbouring councils that were upgrading to Stratos monitoring or another solution, and I grabbed all of their second-hand 16 meg Geminis and I repurposed them for UTC. I managed to get hold of a load of second-hand routers. I learned how to configure them myself, and I got all of the routers we needed for the project for a really good price. I even went down to our IT stores and nicked a load of Ethernet cables and power supplies, so I didn't have to buy those either. And then we did a lot of the work ourselves. So instead of paying our maintenance contractor to go out and collect the configurations, the RAM data, and then do everything, I went and did that. It's not hard, it's just time, and parking always seems to be the problem. I did the FATs for the configs myself in-house, and I went and did the UTC commissioning onto the system myself. So we really went to town on that project, and I delivered that project for a third of the price, which was the money we had. So it was a win, but it was a lot of work. We also have been doing a lot around detection. Where is there detection that we don't need? If an SDE loop has failed, do I need to recut it? They cost a lot of money as high-speed sites, but what if the speed limit's been dropped there? If I pay for a speed survey, which is about 200 quid, I might find that I don't need that loop and I can just remove it from the config, which is cheaper. And we've done that a number of times because a lot of speed limits have been dropped over the last 20 years across the Baines area. Saved us a lot of money. Scoot reduced detection, I did a paper on that at JCT a few years ago. Look that one up, but I used Scoot reduced detection everywhere I could to save money on having to recut failed loops. Where we had stop line detectors that failed, if they were on the main road, the revert, do we really need them? How much difference does that loop really make? Can I get away without it? And also, we had some sites that were, mover was put in, people were being overly cautious some years ago, but the Baines area is a fairly quiet rural area. Some of the sites that are on mover don't need to be. So if we drop them to VA, we can get away with MVDs and get rid of the detectors that cost a fortune to maintain and cut. We also did a lot with alternative detection for Scoot. Again, there's another JCT paper on that. Feel free to go look that up. We've used VA loops and mover loops and SDE loops as Scoots instead of cutting new Scoot detectors. I've used stop lines as filters in Scoot. And we also did a project recently where we got our friends at Coval to build us a little Wi-Fi unit, and we attached that to a 650, powered it all off a street lighting column, bounced the data back to the controller over the Wi-Fi, and it saved us a fortune in repairing ducting and you know, repairing loops. It was a really good little piece of work that got us out of a few holes. So we are being very creative when it comes to problems. So the DFT funded 3 sites, well, kind of. They gave us half the money to do a junction in 2022. We found the other half when we refurbished that junction, which was a win. And then the money that we got in the last round, the statutory element, which was what we ended up with, that did 2 puffing crossings, which were also in dire need of replacement. They were near schools. They were imminently about to be switched off. That also was a win. We also had a little bit left over to do some detection repair work on a junction that was not performing well. So that was good. But that is a drop in the ocean. That's 2.5 sites, and I've got over 40 that are technically life expired. So there is still a funding shortfall, and it is big, and we do need more funding. However, we are pleased that we've won some funding and been able to get ourselves to a point where we don't have any obsolete equipment, and everything, although we do have old sites, it works. We've also found that if you have the time to be creative, you can come up with solutions. We are scrabbling around, literally digging stuff out of skips and refurbishing it, but we are keeping things working. And in Baines, everything works and everything is validated. And that is something that not many councils can say. So it's been hard for us to keep that as, to be the case. I do think other councils probably have some cost saving measures that they can share. What do you do? Do you do speed surveys in order to avoid cutting SD loops? Do you have technologies and methods that you're using that I don't know about? Because if you do, come and tell me. I really want to know about it so I can start implementing these cost saving measures in Baines. And the other thing I want to say is that we have a huge disconnect. So we have a regional transport body that oversee the CRSDS funding and all the other bits and pieces that come from government. And they have all these plans and ideas of what they'd like to do. Really exciting, great stuff, new sets of signals all over the place. It's beautiful things. But over here in the local authority, I am literally digging stuff out of a skip and fixing it. There's a disconnect there. And when schemes are being approved by the department and they're looking at what we're doing and how we're spending our money, I think that needs to be addressed. It's just such a big disconnect that something has to be, surely something has to give somewhere. And the other thing I wanted to say is our funding mechanisms can be problematic. We have occasional bits of money that we have to compete for, and that makes us all competitors, and that makes it harder to work together. We never know what's coming. We never know how much of it and how long for. We then have to scrabble to spend it, along with all the other councils, with limited resource at the contractor end. Can the way we're funded be improved so that it makes it easier for us to do our asset management? So that's basically it. That's my view from the coalface, stingy engineering. So yeah, thank you for listening.